I started off my day boarding the earliest bus to Limerick at 8. I tried to sleep because I knew I was going to have a 16-hour day ahead of me, but I just couldn't. So I looked out the window, and I love how green and how luscious the entirety of Southern Ireland is. It felt like time flew by, and suddenly I was at King John's Castle. The castle itself was just lovely. However, the museum was really cool. The lower level of the castle is a museum, and you get to see a lot of things about how the castle looked and functioned whenever it was first built. I really love this model that helped me see how much Limerick has changed and then also how it has stayed the same. There was also this giant model of men building the castle, so I got to see what that was like. There's some exhibits about how the people who originally lived there lived and some real artifacts. The second part of the museum had information about the siege that the castle was under during the William and Jacobite War. I really liked this walkthrough because it was very sobering, but it also gave you a really good informational breakdown and showed you exactly what happened at each point in the siege. Once again, it was just such a really neat experience, and I also loved the model that showed what the castle was like during the war. And then without further ado, it was time to actually sally forth to the castle, or so I was told. Now, the castle is old enough that part of it is literally being excavated, and that is the first part of the castle that you encounter. That's what you're seeing here. You go down into what's kind of like a little bit of a basement area, and you see stones that, once again, like I said, are literally being excavated. Some of them are actually being marked by archaeologists, and there are parts where you can't go for safety reasons, and then also because this part still is being explored. But as soon as you're done seeing that, it's time to step up and you see the sign that lets you know the courtyard castle is nearby, and indeed it is. You go up the staircase and you see the courtyard. Unfortunately, there were some people moving a stage from a rock concert in the courtyard, so parts of the courtyard were off limits. But the sections that show what medieval life was like, such as the smithery, were still up, and I really enjoyed getting to explore those sections. So most of it's closed down today because, they're doing stuff in the courtyard, but they do have a couple stations where you can play medieval games. Apparently Horseshoes was a big medieval game. It's kind of modern to me, so So it wouldn't be a regular castle or a medieval castle if we didn't have the circular staircase. Every single castle I've been to has the creepy circular staircase. So here it is. The second level had rooms set up to look like a mint, and then also some rooms that were once again set up reminiscent of the William and Jacobite siege, including this room which you see here where they even had some replica weapons, including this gun. From the top of King John's Castle, you can see the entirety of Limerick, including a nearby church, which was our second stop. We left the castle and then walked by the church. We really wanted to go in, but we just didn't have time because we did have a bus to catch, so we explored the outside, and we did walk by the River Shannon, which I had never seen before and found to be very lovely before it was time to make it back to the bus stop and board our second bus, which was to Cork. After we got off of our bus from Cork, we then caught another bus in Cork that went to Blarney, and we hadn't had time for lunch at that point, so we stopped and got snacks. I got Pringles and Smarties. If you haven't seen my video about Smarties, you should probably go ahead and watch that. They're pretty different here in Europe, and I actually prefer them a lot to the American version. But enough about the Smarties. I got to ride on the upper level of a double-decker bus, which always means it's going to be a good day, especially when I get to go through a town as cute as Cork. But the scenery soon shifted and I got to see the Irish countryside from that double-decker bus, and before I knew it, we were in Blarney. The Blarney town is just so sweet and so quaint, and the castle itself is hidden behind all these luscious, gorgeous gardens, and I loved getting to walk through the gardens up to the castle. So they actually let you at Blarney Castle into one of the towers that's on ground level. Here, check this out. There's the entrance, there's a window. So I made a joke earlier about the narrow stairwells. Well, this one's worse. The more we progressed up the staircase, I kept seeing these signs saying to proceed at our own risk because the staircase was narrow, and they weren't joking. I wasn't able to get a video of the actual stairs, but my friend got a video of me squeezing between this doorway, and let me assure you, the staircase was much more narrow, and that was for defense purposes, but it was very intimidating and scary to walk up. However, it led to these amazing sights, and eventually it did lead up to the Blarney Stone. Now, I'm sure you're familiar with the Blarney Stone. Kissing it is said to bring the gift of gab. No one really knows why this started, but it is a beloved tradition, and I did kiss the Blarney Stone. Now, before you come at me and say that everyone pees on it, that is a myth. If you do any research, you will very quickly discover that it's a myth. Also, as you can see from this video, the logistics of that would be very hard. So that's why here I am kissing the Blarney Stone and absolutely loving it. Now, I didn't really understand how big the drop was. It looked really big while I was kissing it, but once I got outside, I realized that's where you're kissing the Blarney Stone. I took to Google, and Google assured me that nobody has died kissing the Blarney Stone, which I guess is reassuring. The last thing we saw was the murder hole, which is basically, it's just a giant hole, but it's over the doorway. So when invaders were coming in, any type of hot scalding water or boiling oil could be dropped down that and halt the advance. Once again, here I am in the stockades, and now it was time for the garden. Now they have a special garden dedicated to poisons at the Blarney Castle, and I absolutely love the poison garden. Hey you guys, check this out. They have Lily of the Valley here. Agatha Christie talks about this in her books. I wonder how many plants there are here that Agatha Christie uses. I don't know. Okay, we have the second plant that I recognize, and that is monkshood, also known as wolf's bane. And if you're familiar with Harry Potter, like, yes, it is that wolf's bane. It is still commonly used in some Wiccan neo-pagan religions. It is, however, highly toxic, and it was associated with werewolves back in the day, and different healers would try to use it to cure people of being werewolves, but that didn't really work. They usually died. There's also some mandrakes down here, which also have a very long history of usage within witchcraft. If you're once again familiar with Harry Potter, there's this part where they're like digging up the mandrakes and they're screaming. People used to actually teach that, and it was because some mandrake hunters didn't want other people to scavenge where they're growing in the wild, and so they would say, like, hey, if you pull it up, it'll scream and it'll kill you. So that actually does come from a real myth. But here's what... Okay, I know way too much about poisons, and I'm way too excited to see half of these, but look, I have hemlock. This is what Socrates was killed with. He decided that he was going to choose death willingly because the state had condemned him, and he was sentenced to drinking hemlock. We soon walked back into town because we wanted to eat before our bus left, and we found this quaint little Italian restaurant, and when I say that's the best pizza I've had in a while, I'm definitely not lying. It was so good. And then it was time to board the bus, our first bus, to get back into Cork. Now, we did take a later bus out of Cork because we wanted to spend a little bit of time exploring that city. And here's some views of Cork. I love getting to see the harbor, and I really enjoyed this town, and hopefully I get to return to Cork, Blarney, and Limerick sometime soon.